This is the first time I've done a video of this magnitude. There's a lot of editing involved and things like that, so I hope it's informative and grabs your attention enough and I can get my point across. I also wanted this to be fun as well. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy.
Halo Wars in recent years has been one of my most favorite games to play with friends. For me to say there's countless memories resulting from the long games, Super Turtles, waiting 700 minutes to find matches, or for someone to ready up would be an understatement. Despite the fact I've been playing this Hood Classic gem for several thousand hours, I find myself amazed to this very day by the community finding new ways to increase the replayability of a long forgotten game. A feature of the game that has always piqued my interest ever since I laid my eyes upon it was the stars showing up above unit health bars at times. Going from something I would brush off as a new player to now being one of many who maximize its potential, I always wondered to myself, how come no one made a video talking about Veterancy? It's addressed in unit versus battles, Super Turtles,
because as anyone who has watched my videos knows, you have to clear out every turret, every watchtower on the rebel bases to get as much veterancy as possible.
unit guides,
Every time a Spartan gets an upgrade or a veterancy star, it adds a multiplier to their damage output.
and discussed on forums, but no video explanation. Trust me, I looked.
You see, typed in the Halo Wars Veterancy Guide and got nothing.
So, here's a guide on Veterancy and what the heck it does. Disclaimer: the information I was able to ascertain mostly stemmed from the Halo Wars unit stat page. The link itself no longer works when you normally try to access it. However, the workaround to this is to use the Wayback Machine. Paste the link and voila. Additional sources such as Steam and the Halo Fandom Wiki were also used, though not as factually driven compared to the aforementioned unit stat page. The discussions around it I deem valid enough to be addressed in this video. The links will be in the description below. For those who are curious, this video will be mostly going over how veterancy is applied in the standard game mode, since that is where the majority of games take place. The Deathmatch and Reinforcements game mode just aren't played enough by comparison to garner extensive results. Nonetheless, mention it I will.
Veterancy? What is it exactly, and how do I get it?
Well, veterancy is a unit's way of saying,
Scorpion fueled and ready.
Hey buddy, thanks for keeping me alive. Because you've done such a good job ensuring I don't blow up or fall to the ground, I'll perform even better for you.
Canister.
Improve.
veterancy, just like veterans, have more experience in combat than their non-veteranized counterparts, being identifiable by a brief, misty-looking effect appearing and leaving behind the iconic star emblem above the unit's health bar. Another change that kind of hides in plain sight to signify veterancy is the increase in the shield number, which is located towards the lower middle section of the screen when selecting a unit. This number will stack with any upgrades the unit has. As an example, a future anti-wave here, there was a slight mistake I made when addressing the Scorpion tank's shield number. When it's fully upgraded in standard, the shield number is a 3, and then when it gets a star, the shield number is a 4. I mixed those numbers up. I apologize, the change will be made in the video. A power turret tank will have a shield number of 4. Then once it acquires a star, the shield number increases to 5. Thus making it safe to say, veterancy stacks with upgrades. I'll even go ahead and claim unit upgrades are pseudo-stars, considering most stats improve akin to it. The stars or veterancy points are acquired and only acquired after a unit or group of units have defeated enemy structures, vehicles, infantry, etc. Essentially, the longer a unit survives in combat, the more stars it's likely to get, depending on how many enemies killed. The rate at which stars can be gained depends on what you destroy and the quantity behind it, such as eliminating neutral factions like rebel bases, rebel infantry, sentinels, and flood. Or adversarial factions like player bases and player controlled units. All units in the game have a stat called a bounty, meaning the amount of XP something is worth upon being killed. If it's more than one attacker that killed the bounty, the EXP will be divided up based on how much damage was done to the target.
To elaborate, the Scorpion tank's bounty is 20, and to make it simple, let's say its HP value is 500. Scenario 1, 2v1. If the two tanks shoot at the exact same time and did 250 damage respectively, the bounty would be 10 XP since 50% of the damage was equally distributed by the two tanks. Scenario 2, 3v2. With the two tanks carrying a bounty of 40 and 1000 HP collectively, the situation can vary greatly when trying to get stars on certain units. If the three green tanks labeled A, B, and C were to auto-fire at one of the two opposing yellow tanks, knocking out the first tank will result in a bounty of about 6.6 XP for one, then 6.6 for another, giving the three green tanks a combined total of about 13.26 XP if the three tanks distributed an even amount of damage to each tank. The aforementioned scenarios can be used as an indicator towards why some of your Spartan tanks or Covenant leaders are getting stars way faster than others. Of course, we know it won't always be tanks you're fighting. It could be air units, infantry, Uber units, the list goes on and on. Infantry tend to have lower bounties, such as Medic Marines having a bounty of 6, a Banshee having a bounty of 8, and a Scarab having a bounty of 120. On top of that, each unit has varying degrees of XP needed to get stars. Going back to the Marines, for them to get their first star only takes 1 XP, whereas a Scorpion tank needs 40 XP. Take note that to go from one star to the next is not the same amount of XP per level. For example, for a Marine to get 1 star, you would need 1 XP. The XP needed for that same Marine to go from 1 to 2 stars, 3 XP is required. When trying to get stars for a Scorpion tank, again, to get the tank to its first star requires 40 XP, then from that 1 star to the second star, 100 XP is required. It makes sense as to why infantry units require the least amount of XP to level up. Since they have some of the lowest health pools in the game, it's only reasonable for them to gain stars the fastest. More on how broken this can be later. Upon attaining a star, the unit in question has now been statistically amplified. Damage multiplier, damage reduction, have all been increased, resulting in an overall superior iteration of what was once not starred. The amount of stars all units can reach, excluding Spartan commandeered vehicles, is 3, with each respective star improving the unit's viability. 1 star increases the unit's damage by 15% and takes 13% less damage. 2 stars increases the damage by 25% and taking 20% less damage. And lastly, 3 stars increases the unit's damage by 35% and taking 26% less damage. I did not mention total health because this stat in particular remains static. I used to think HP increased for the longest time. Please note, these increases are universal. It does not matter what unit gets a star, be it a Jackal or a Vulture. The first star means they will do 15% more damage and take 13% less damage. Now I did mention the star limit being capped at 3. Technically, there is no actual limit to the amount of stars that can be gained. However, thanks to this person accessing the game files, the stats show this. I will put this on screen. Reaching star levels 4 and 5 requires 0 XP. In other words, it can never be accessed unless outside scripted events like Mission 7 where you can rescue the ODSTs. In a way, we should be grateful the star cap is at 3. If there wasn't, we would have 100 star brute chieftains walking around one-shotting scarabs. For clarification, it was thanks to this YouTuber, who happens to be a Halo Wars modder. He told me that Veterancy applies to any unit object in the game, which also includes bases. More on this later.
And now for something completely different.
What's the best way to get stars?
The best way to get stars is by attacking rebel bases and infantry scattered throughout the map, taking out each watchtower, turret, and aforementioned infantry squad that comes your way. This also includes sentinels and flood. Going for the base directly reduces the amount of XP your units receive and is not recommended for starring them up. I will showcase a visual example. The map is Beasley's Plateau. I am using the Brute Chieftain, and the build order is the exact same for both left and right sides of the screen. Supply pad twice, and a temple along with inheritance.
As you can see, the side on the left got a star and the side on the right didn't get a star. Of course, this will not always be the same example every map. This is just to show you what can happen if you go for every watchtower and if you don't go for it. Keep in mind, foreigner themed maps like Labyrinth and Repository, for example, don't provide the best amount of XP since they don't have individual watchtower or turret buildings to take out, due to them being connected to the base as a whole, in turn lowering XP needed for stars. It's still possible, just not as forgiving by comparison to rebel bases. The next best way to get stars after that is to keep killing high bounty XP targets from players. In other words, repeatedly killing tanks, as an example, is a good way to farm stars, and theoretically, if your opponent doesn't care, killing uber units over and over is the best way to get stars. And of course, lastly, if all those options are exhausted, just simply killing units over and over again, also including bases, will also be the next best way to get stars.
I am not dying to a carpet bomb, you punk bitch.
How effective are your units with stars anyway? Is there a difference?
Yes, there is a difference. In the right hands, it can be very effective. The effectiveness of your units getting stars will vary depending on many variables, such as player skill. I would like to elaborate on what I mean by player skill in the context of Halo Wars. Skill will always be a determining factor in any game. When referring to Halo Wars, I generally mean game sense, such as knowing how to micro, scout, gather supplies, respond to build orders, hold off rushes, tacking down, knowing when to push and attack with allies. Veteranized units won't matter if you don't know these things, so please keep it in mind, whether you or the enemy has high starred units. Leader and unit composition, map, and combat situations. While we're on the topic of effectiveness, here's an example. A 1-star power turret tank is greater than a power turret tank with no stars. In only one scenario, the 1-star power turret tank tends to win the engagement. Should that precious 1-star tank get jumped by 2 or more tanks, consider the star worthless. However, a power turret tank is better and always better to have than a Tech 1 tank with 1 star. But a 3-star base tank is better than a power turret tank.
I'm all PT'd up.
Unless you're playing the reinforcement game mode, please upgrade that tank. And for the last example, a Scarab with no stars will be almost killed by a quad mech. But a 3-star Scarab can tank that same quad mech pretty well. Of course, be mindful of more than one cutter. They tough, but they ain't invincible. Please keep in mind, these situations I have shown on screen are in a vacuum. The general point still stands. Managing upgrades through staying ahead of your opponent's tech level is important. Veterancy just makes that deal even sweeter. And yes, there is a difference when stars are applied. Now, Dishonor's favorite part, the misconceptions. Thankfully, there's only 2 worth mentioning. The main one we all thought to ourselves at least once in our careers is upgrades allowing us to get veterancy faster. This is emphatically false in terms of gaining XP for the first star. For example, researching canister shelf with a scorpion doesn't just suddenly reduce the amount of XP needed for the first star, as if candy shell makes the XP value 30 instead of 40. Getting the upgrade for the majority of units allows them to dish out more damage, in turn killing the rebel bases faster, thus we get the star sooner because of the upgrade as a result of the damage increase. Hopefully that makes sense. In most cases, it's quicker to get stars on the non-upgraded units like Spartans and Company Leaders, since the extra resources spent on them to upgrade could be used for more important things.
which can vary depending on the lobby skill range. More on this later. Even with that addressed, there are times where your Covenant leaders and Spartans kill 2 bases on one map and get 2 stars, while on the other, 3 whole bases leave you with 1 star. I still have yet to figure that out. I'll gladly converse with anyone in the comments about this stroke of luck.
As for the second and last misconception, some people think stars apply differently across each unit, like 1 star buffs a scarab by 15% but another value for a marine. This is true for Halo Wars 2, not Definitive Edition. Enough said.
Now the question is, what units, or rather, what player-controlled units can gain stars?
We'll start with the UNSC faction. For the infantry, Marines, Flamethrowers, and Spartans. This also includes Captain Cutter's ODSTs and Sergeant Forge's Cyclops. For the vehicles, we got Warthogs, Scorpions, Cobras, and Wolverines, followed up by Cutter's Elephant and Professor Anders's Gremlin units respectively. Obviously, we should include the Grizzlies as well. Next up, the aerial vehicles such as Hornets, and by proxy Anders's Hawks, and Vultures all have a shot of getting veterancy. Next up, the Covenant. Like the UNSC, the infantry isn't too dissimilar. The Covenant hero units such as the Brute Chieftain, Arbiter, and Prophet, followed by their special units, Brute Squads, Suicide Grunts, and Elite Honor Guards respectively. Infantry is the Grunts, Jackals, and Hunters. For vehicles, Ghosts, Choppers, Wraiths, Locusts, and Scarabs. And air units, Banshee and Vampire. What player control units cannot gain veterancy? Engineers and Foreigner units, which includes the Sentinels, Super Sentinels, Offensive Protectors, Shield Protectors, and Healing Protectors. While not necessarily a unit like a infantry or vehicle, it is still controlled by a player. I'm talking about the bases and their structures. Structures like a supply pad and summit cannot gain stars simply because they don't do any damage, therefore unable to get kills. Turrets, however, can do damage, so why can't they get stars? I'll make an educated guess. Based off of how the 4 and 5 star rating need 0 XP, it's probably similar to all the structures. Engineers don't get stars due to them healing. The point of veterancy is to get stars when killing something. Of course, you can get starred engineers in the reinforcements game mode, or witnessing it by putting on the Rebel Leader skull when against a Covenant AI. However, that's not player control, but you can at least see it. Sentinels are odd. They have the ability to get kills, but don't acquire stars. Again, you can see them on AI, but not when you're in control. My guess will just link back to my reasoning on the buildings not getting it either. What units gain veterancy the fastest? And which units are the best with it? To prevent this video from being 8,000 hours long, I'll only be going over the units that appear late game. This includes the Spartan Trio, Covenant Leaders, Scorpion Tanks, Wolverines, Cobras, and Scarabs. I will gladly elaborate more on why I think the aforementioned subjects are the best when started up in a part 2 of this guide. We'll see how this video does. Anyway, back to the chapter. For units getting stars the fastest, it simply comes down to those under the infantry category. Marines and Grunts have the fastest time when you go barracks/hall first, train about 3 to 4, and destroy a turret. The Arbiter, hands down, gains stars the fastest due to his rage glitch. When done right, he can have 2 to 3 stars in as little as 4 minutes and 11 seconds, thanks to a player called Ego, because all he does is play Arbiter. The UNSC faction has the biggest benefit with stars, due to them having 3 13-star units thanks to their Spartans being the most cracked unit in the game when commandeering a vehicle. The units in question that are the best with it are the Spartan tanks, followed by Cobras and Wolverines in that order. The Covenant get the short end of the stick for better or worse, with their leader units and Scarabs being the only thing that matters with stars in the long run. The units when playing this faction goes as follows. The Arbiter and Chieftain being tied with first, and the Prophet being second to third and jumping to first depending on the situation. Scarabs do pretty well when having 2 or more stars and should not be trifled with. In a vacuum, that is.
Bonus round. Good luck.
As I stated in the intro, the Deathmatch and Reinforcements game mode just aren't play enough by comparison to garner extensive results when looking at the current player base. Of course, I am not the current player base. I've played Deathmatch half as much as I played Standard, and Reinforcements a bit enough to address it while pertaining to Veterancy. Starting with Deathmatch. Deathmatch grants you all upgrades and 15k resources from the get-go, on top of increasing your population per base. This should make getting Veterancy easier, right? In a vacuum, yes. In reality, no. Yes, because you can make any unit you want, and send it to every base on the map and not worry about losing health too much thanks to its max upgrades. On the flip side, you doing that gives the enemy plenty of time to have a massive population advantage over you. Great, you got a 10-star tank. What is that going to do against someone with a population of 75 and higher? Deathmatch also flips the UNSC and Covenant dynamic on its head. Generally speaking, the UNSC has the advantage over the Covenant in terms of their units being slightly stronger than Covenant counterparts, with the trade-off being a lower population limit by 10. Deathmatch equalizes both factions' population, forcing everyone to be at 15 at the beginning. What makes the Covenant better in Deathmatch is their base strength. UNSC and Covenant bases have their own quirky ways of creating a more resilient central structure. The central structure for the UNSC base becomes stronger the more buildings it supplied, whereas the Covenant benefits from the base itself upgrading. To give an example, a fortress with all 7 buildings built is equivalent to a citadel with 0 buildings, and a fortress with 0 buildings is like an outpost. Deathmatch forces all bases to be at their max levels, but the fortress you're queuing might as well be a Covenant outpost in terms of health. Queuing Covenant bases are way stronger in Deathmatch thanks to this, which can affect musical bases even more than what it already does. To top it off, for some reason, the Wraith in Deathmatch seems to be stronger than its standard brother, having a shield number of 5 instead of 3. Meanwhile, the power turret tank has the same number of 3 regardless of standard or Deathmatch. This makes Wraith rushing a tough trap to deal with when you're UNSC, especially against Prophets. Again, if you're able to hijack a Wraith and hold onto it, you'll know what it's like to have the power of God and enemy on your side. The guide for Veterancy can still be applied to Deathmatch, but it's a lot more difficult to pull off since that game mode incentivizes rushing to its utmost limit. Nonetheless, try it. If you dare. Now, Reinforcements is a different beast altogether. I'm gonna let Robo Snoop explain what this person said right here, because I'm too tired to say this shit.
In Reinforcements, you don't build units, but you can upgrade them. Units come in waves which take varying times to arrive, anywhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. Each wave gives you units based on your money and population. If you have a lot of money or population, it gives you a few more expensive units or a ton of cheap ones. And if you have little money or population, it gives you a few cheap ones. Also, these units can have varying degrees of veterancy, which are those stars above units, making them better.
Thanks. You can still get veterancy in this game mode by making Spartans and Covenant leaders, but that's the only units you can train. Engineers too, for healing purposes of course. Everything else is all depending on how well you bank. Banking is when you queue buildings and or upgrades in order to keep your resource count below 100 before the next wave to save money for the next one. The best way to bank is to queue turrets for both factions combined with upgrades you don't need. The goal of Reinforcements is to bank on 3k resources to get 3-star tanks or Hornets. Keep in mind the tech level will affect what you get for 3k resources. For example, if you have 3k on tech 0 to 1, this means you will most likely get garbage, while 3k resources on tech 2 will generally give you vehicles of some kind. Good luck on getting there in the first place. Jokes aside, the Reinforcements game mode is technically the fastest way to get veterancy without really doing anything. However, it is the only time where you'll see an army of 3-star base tanks or air destroying your base instantly. So, risk versus reward at its finest.
Bonus round over.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for making it to the end. I would like to give a big shout out and thanks to the homies Dishonor God, Zeno DBE, Crimson 8541, and Reno Bagino. Oh man, I am really, really tired after making this video. This was a few months in the making. I hope it was enjoyable. Stay tuned for part 2. See y'all later. I am tired.